Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sasrikal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, buna, privyet, mabuhay, and jean dobre. It's really, really good to be with you again. And I know you'll be so happy you've joined us today because we have a very cool guest with us. And that is Martyn Williams, who's an executive coach. And I'm going to invite him in just a moment to tell us more about that. But before that, welcome, Martyn.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you and so excited to learn from you today. Please tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Oh, okay. Um, for many years, I led expeditions around the world, to mountaineering, canoeing, kayak, to the most extreme places, North Pole, South Pole, Everest. And on that journey, I encountered all sorts of wild conditions. And so then I was looking, what is human performance? So
Mm,
then uh, some of those executives I was guiding, millionaires and billionaires came to me and said, "Well, could you coach me?" So I started a coaching business, and now I run a coaching business. And I really, but the topics you speak about here are of extreme interest to me, So I think there's a lot of similarities between how I approach life, my life experience, and your life experience, and then what we can offer to the world from that place.
yeah, yes. You know, when you talk about having led these expeditions to I mean, like to most of us feels extreme, right? Like, oh my gosh, going to an expedition to the North Pole or the South Pole, etc. And it made me really think a little bit about even just like the mindset that it takes to come to a conclusion that I'm going to engage in this kind of activity that maybe only a handful of people in the world have even attempted to do.
Interesting. Yes.
Tell
So,
me a little bit more about that. Yeah.
okay. So I really see it as a curiosity of
Mm,
what is possible. And so I know entrepreneurs have this same thing often, in life we all have what is possible. But I guess for me, um, it was blank spaces on the map I was always curious about.
mm,
So a blank area on the map, I wanted to know what was there, and then how do I get there? What do I need to get there? Then there follows a whole plethora of things about the skills, etc., etc. And I realized that every time I did that, I also became slightly more comfortable in a wilder environment.
mm,
And I guess that's a metaphor for life, is that the more we become comfortable in different environments, the more life unfolds for us, the more we see more possibilities for ourselves, more opportunities for ourselves. Because, again, just like think of reading, right? So we start off with a very thin book and with big letters and we get comfortable with that, then we automatically graduate to the next step. But it's not necessarily the teacher tells us, but we typically want to move to the next step, right? And so I
mm.
was doing something similar, but on a big scale with nature.
Huh. So curiosity was a huge driving factor, huh?
Yes.
I don't know if I have ever felt that much. I mean, I guess in my own way, there are things that I'm really curious about. Like for me, a lot of it has been focused around mental health and how to take control of my mental health, how to improve my mental health. And that's sort of like where I have channeled my curiosity since I was very young, actually, and consistently through my life, now that I think about it. Um, but like for me, that curiosity seemed to be, at least in my early life, to be driven by a need. Like I had an intense need because I was traumatized as a
Hmm.
child.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
so I felt very out of control of my mental health and my life in general. And so I felt driven to try and find some solutions for me. But I'm wondering if there was something else um, besides the curiosity that was driving you. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Great. It's a great question. And I the way I see this is that for me, for instance, I was the youngest of three brothers, and
Mm,
my two other brothers were good at the main sports, And so when I discovered that I was good at this exploring of nature and rock climbing, things like that, it became my niche.
mm,
And so one could say that I became an explorer through psychological dysfunction,
yeah.
right? And the way I see this in terms of just about everybody on the planet, because in my own work, I've come across, say, people who are super good negotiators. When you track it back, it was a survival mechanism in early childhood. They
Mm,
would negotiate between them, their mother and father when there was friction, right? So psychologists talk about this as being a winning formula. They came up with a winning formula coming from survival. In order for my family to be at peace, my parents to be at peace, I have to negotiate. So I
mm,
become good at it. Now I'm good at it. Let me apply it in more situations. It's almost like the default. Then they become, and so the same with comedians. There's a lot of research that says often comedians came from families where comedy was the way of feeling secure. They could turn a bizarre situation, make it comedic, and
mm.
the tension was reduced, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again, it was from often a survival mechanism. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I've worked with some billionaires and millionaires, and when some of them, when I've looked at their lives, I've looked and said, wow, this is actually here we have this sort of pinnacle of, supposedly pinnacle of Western success, right? To
Yeah.
be that wealthy. But if we look at their lives, they're often quite dysfunctional in that they came up at early age. I need more money to feel comfortable. I have
Mm,
to get more. So they came up with all these ways of doing it, which they're still running that pattern, in their 50s and 60s. Meanwhile, they have hardly, their health is poor, all these sorts of other things
yeah.
which, if we look at it holistically are not there. So as I totally see how, you're coming from a survival place. Hey, I have to figure this out, and so the have to then, but so there is, so there's curiosity in there, but how's the survival, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on the level of survival. So yours was an urgent survival. Mine was more a psychological survival. I want to be recognized by my family.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, thankfully for me also it was not urgent in terms of like physical survival. I was physically safe by and large after the initial trauma, but the psychological safety did not, like I continued to struggle with that well into, I would say, even into my 30s, even until very recently, I would say. Because it's like you don't realize how many different manifestations fear takes.
Hmm.
And so you think you're doing something because I mean, you have all these different reasons you give yourself of, wanting success and achievement and recognition and this and that. And like for me, I was also like I would say like by the time I was in my mid 20s, certainly I was more focused on, okay, yeah, I have to make a career and succeed and this and that. And so I wasn't constantly thinking about it from a survival perspective, at least not consciously. But
Hmm. Hmm.
like for me, as I continued my inner healing and my journey and my like deeper dive into mental health, I realized that for me, a lot of even my drive for achievement and so forth, there was like some fear behind
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
And it was just manifesting in so many different ways.
Yes, again, as I chat with people, I really see that um, we have multiple methods to hide our fears, to not, to cover them up so we don't have to face them. So I'll
Mhm.
give you an example, having done all this very physical stuff, right? So you think, well, he's probably fearless, but um, there's one project I was doing where I needed to raise money, and I never raised money before. And so
Mm,
my friends gave me, very valuable contacts, people who could absolutely fund this project. And I'd go into my office to make the phone call. I'd look at the phone and fear would overwhelm me. My hands would get sweaty, my tummy would churn, my heart would palpitate. So I'd go off and I'd plan what I knew, like the food, cold weather food. I knew all about cold weather food and how many calories and how much fat, all that sort of
yes.
stuff, right? And so I'd do that, but the project wasn't going anywhere. So eventually I realized if I want this project to go somewhere, I have to face this fear. So what I'm going to do. And so I ended up coming up with, well, let me create a visualization of the project finish. And it was involving young people, and it was a big journey, and they were going to be at the South Pole. So let me see this young people, 8 young people from around the world at the South Pole, and they're all yahooing, right? So when I closed my eyes and did that, my energy, the fear would fade away. I'd get all excited.
Mm.
And as soon as I got a high level of excitement, it was that probably about a minute, I'd reach out, grab the phone, and make the call, right? But well, there's two problems. First of all, I was now on the phone highly excited, so I would blurt out stuff and it wouldn't make sense. Right? So, and then secondly, the next day I'd walk back in the office and the fear was there. I
Mm,
always thought the fear would disappear, but no, 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 the fear's there. So
mm,
again, I'd have to go, oh, I need to use my technique again and just, but I got so that I could go from fear to excitement in about 30 seconds if I worked at it,
yeah.
using visualization to change my
Yeah.
body chemistry.
Yes. So what you just said about uh that experience of, you got super energized, excited, and then uh but then the next day when you came back to the office, the fear was there again. Um, did that part of it change over time in terms of as you use this technique of the visualization and upping your energy, using it as you did it more and more over time, did the underlying fear sort of reduce, go away? What happened there?
Yeah, what happened with me is that it definitely reduced, and now it's way reduced. And I see though that as I work with people, I see that depending on our inner space, that fear is big for us or non-existent. So, so within a day, I can have where my inner space is clear and calm and relaxed. If somebody says to me, "Hey, pick up the phone and phone somebody important," I'll go, "Oh yeah, sure." At another time, if my inner space is all disturbed and jumbled, somebody says the same thing to me, and I'll be going, "No, no, no, not right now.
Yeah.
That's not possible in this moment." So I
Yeah.
realize that how we interact with the outer world varies a lot depending on our inner space.
Yes. That is so true. That is so true.
And if you don't mind, another sort of take from all these expeditions is that I realize really there's, um, so imagine, for instance, you've committed to going to ski to the South Pole,
Yeah.
and every day the landscape is the same, and you're traveling into wind, the temperatures are -10, and there's a slight headwind, right? And so you're
Yeah.
out there, and so the mind, it's just you and the mind for 10 hours, right? So
Yeah.
the mind can do four things. It can go into complaint, which is, how did I choose this silly trip? What the
Yeah.
heck am I doing here? My hands are cold, my feet are cold, blah, 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 right? Just complaint. Or it can go into daydream, which is, oh, I wish I was somewhere else. I wish I was back on a beach in Hawaii or in Southern California or whatever. Or it can go into being present with what is, and all it is snow, right?
Mm,
Snow and sunlight, or snow and cloud. But when we're present with what is, the snow is gorgeous.
mm,
The light reflecting off it, 1,000 different little shivers and shimmers, and so, and then the other one is then, or we can go into a more creative space with what, I'd love to share this with, we can go into creativity.
ah,
And what I realized is that out of each one of those four things, they affected my physical performance. So
yeah.
here I am trucking along doing, 3 miles an hour or so. As soon as I went into complaint, my performance dropped down. If
Yeah.
I went into daydream, my performance was better than complaint, but not optimal. When I
Mm,
was present, my performance was good. When I went into creative, my performance had a bounce in it. My step had a
mm.
bounce in it.
Oh,
And
that,
so I realized there's four things we can do with our mind at any moment on a
wow.
daily basis.
Yeah. No, tell me a little bit more about the the creative part of things because and how and like what about it is it that ends up giving you that extra bounce even beyond like being present in the moment because like a lot of times like for me the goal is to be present in the moment well and to focus interesting but before I start thinking about my own thing I want to hear from you. You make me think so much which I
Yeah.
love so please tell me more.
Okay. So, you know, I agree with you that being in the moment is what's so important.
Yeah.
And the creative typically comes up as a bubbling idea, a bubbling energy, which has excitement with it.
Ah.
Then as we start following the creation, though, the creative can get into the more mundane steps, right? So
Ah.
having had the initial spurt of creativity, then is the actualization of it, which can have more mundane steps. And that's when we get into the more mundane steps, that's when we can get back out of the moment again. Because in the more mundane steps, now we're trekking across Antarctica, and we can either go into blame or daydream, right? Which
Yeah.
reduces the performance. So the act itself can have different motivations, but the space that we have in the act often determines yeah, our the outcome and also our enjoyment of the event. So I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
So having set the goal of, say, getting to the South Pole, if, for instance, the weather turns bad and the storm comes in, we don't get there,
Mm,
then our response, we can feel completely fulfilled or we can feel disappointed, right?
right.
And so from my perspective, the difference between feeling completely fulfilled and disappointed is typically how much we were present in the moment during the event.
Mm,
So if we're present in the moment all the time for those 50 days and we fail, we go, oh, I had a great time, right? If in those 50 days we've been looking forward to the wish of getting there and we're focused on our desire, when we get there, we're going to be disappointed.
right.
So what we do on the journey, the space we inhabit on the journey
Mm.
determines the outcome.
Yes. Yes. For some
And
reason, you made me think about fasting. Actually, I was watching this, I was babysitting.
yeah, okay.
And so we had this video on, it was supposed to teach kids about fasting. It was for
Yes,
Muslim
yeah.
kids. For those of our listeners who may not be familiar, for practicing Muslims during the month of Ramadan, which is one of the months in the Muslim calendar. We fast every day from dawn to sunset, which
Hmm.
means we don't eat, we don't drink, and that's the physical level fast. And then at a mental, emotional level, we are encouraged to regulate our emotions so that, we are behaving kindly and compassionately and so forth. And so this video was aiming to teach kids about fasting. And of course, you know, for our little kids, especially the younger kids, um, the the experience of going hungry and thirsty um, can be new. I mean, assuming they're coming from well-off families and they haven't had to go hungry and thirsty. So it's like a new experience, and it's like, what do I do? You can get really obsessed about
Hmm.
the not being able to eat and drink.
Hmm.
And I thought what they did in the video was really clever because when the kids were complaining about feeling hungry and thirsty, the dad came along and he was like, "Hey, come play with me."
Hmm.
And then they got busy playing,
Hmm.
and in that busyness of play, they forgot to complain.
Hmm. Yes, yeah. It's
Uh,
actually I it's interesting because, typically when we mention fasting to people who don't fast, they think how horrific.
hmm,
And so, as I've chatted with various Muslim people, I've heard consistently, oh, actually, it's a beautiful experience, especially in the latter half of the period that they're fasting. They're reporting that that those thoughts don't occur to them. They're just actually they're having a beautiful time. So it's again it ties in with my comment about
yes.
the mind noise.
Yeah.
But I guess it's from my perspective, if we look at that as like a case study in mind, it's
Yeah.
important to understand it's the mind noise that takes it out of the game,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so it's the mind noise that will wreck the experience. So just to, it's whether you're fasting or trekking
Yeah.
across Antarctica, it's the
Yeah.
mind noise that will wreck the experience.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was like thinking about. So, in my experience, like staying in the moment is so critically important because generally, when we are not doing so well, whether it's stress or worry or any negative emotion that we're experiencing, we're generally not in the moment. We are
Hmm.
either
Yes.
in the past or in the future. And so, like for me, grounding ourselves in the present moment is extremely, extremely important. But then, when we think about being in the moment, I did realize that um like you mentioned creativity giving the boost, and like for me the teaching is to focus on gratitude, like what do we
Hmm.
have to be grateful for in the moment, and
Hmm.
that gives the big boost. So it's because you could be like, okay, I'm in the moment, but then you start focusing on everything that you judge to be wrong or
Hmm.
problematic in the moment, so then that doesn't help
Hmm.
so much. But so I can see, like, if you go into creativity, that's a sort of definitely a very positive
Hmm.
high energy state to be in.
Ah, interesting. No, you see, I tie it back into in the moment, from my perspective,
Mm,
when we're in the moment, we're the observer of ourselves.
mm,
We're either silent, right, in
mm.
which case, or we're the observer of ourselves, and so we're the observer of the part of us that gets irritated. Oh, there's that irritated voice, right, and that's cropping up, and so you know, as we go on this journey of mental health, I really see that if we can observe ourselves from a beautiful place, a non-judgmental place,
Yes.
then we we start unlocking the patterns that keep the behaviors in place, you know?
Yes. You know, it's so you're so on point with that. And the thing is though that the non-judgment does not come naturally to most of
Mm,
us, if any of us, actually. And I remember one time very specifically, I was actually leading a workshop where my goal was to teach people about mindfulness.
mhm,
And, mindfulness by definition is a two-part um, ex phenomena or process, or I'm losing the proper word, but there's two parts to mindfulness. One is the being present in the moment, and so you're observing to being the observer, and the second part is actually the non-judgmental observer.
mhm,
And what I found when I was leading the workshop is I was like asking people about, hey, what do you think mindfulness is about? And everyone got that, oh, we're supposed to be an observer.
mhm,
But uh, pretty much everyone was missing the insight about the fact that we are to be the non-judgmental observer,
mhm.
you know?
Aha. And I agree totally that that's the essence of it, is that it's witnessing the behavior, right? Witnessing the behavior and being kind about the behavior. And so, just as we spoke earlier, if we look at it from the perspective of survival and then winning formula as an example. So when we as the non-judgmental observer, even if say we're someone who gets angry, then if the person can stay in the non-judgment, and they can look and say, oh, now it's my winning formula running the show. I'm responding from survival. This is not my essence. This is just this, unfortunately, this is in my cellular memory, literally, because it is. It's in, we're like Pavlov's dogs. An incident happens and boom, the
Yeah,
anger comes up, right? And
yeah.
so, but it's not our essential essence. It's just a part of our cellular memory. And so the more we can compartmentalize, oh, my cellular memory is acting out, right? The more we bring kindness towards our cellular memory and we don't beat up our cellular memory, right?
Yes. And the really beautiful thing about it is that when you don't start beating yourself up or that cellular memory of that you have, it just allows it to go away.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
comes and then it
Yeah.
goes away.
Yeah. And as I work with people, I do see though, especially some of these patterns, and anger, I think is a good one to talk about because at first, often people were saying to me, well, I was unable to catch the trigger. I just can't, it's just boom, I'm in full scale volcanic eruption from zero. I'm calm 1 second, boom, the next, right? And the more they start taking the time to be the observer of it from a gentle place, the more they start noticing cracks in they'll start finding gaps. And it may take a while, it may take even 6 months, but after 6 months, they might be saying to their partner, oh, a month ago that would have triggered me, but now I'm actually able to laugh at myself. The anger's coming up, or the frustration's building, but I can laugh at it and it's
Yeah.
fading away again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh. I wish more people realize that the emotions, I mean, I never invalidate any emotion. It's always there for a reason, and it's
Hmm.
there for a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
reason. But
Yeah.
but to realize and recognize that the emotion is pretty much always coming up in response to the way that we're thinking or the way that we're acting.
Hmm.
And so if we could be aware of what we are thinking that's causing that emotion,
Hmm. Hmm.
or how we are acting that's causing that emotion to come up,
Hmm.
then I mean, that's really the key to us um, being able to, if we wanted to feel something different, then
Hmm.
then we can choose to think something different or do something different, and so allow ourselves to feel something different without suppressing our emotions or, all of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I see that from, again, from my own experience. I'll relate one more experience then. So, Mount Everest is the highest peak in the world, and I'd wanted to go there for many years. And finally, some clients came to me and said, "We would like you to guide us on Mount Everest because we've climbed with you elsewhere. We trust you." So so I then assembled a team. So there were three guides, and we had lots of Sherpas and porters, and so the three guides are really in charge of the logistics. We're not literally physically guiding each client. We're setting up a logistics system. So some of the clients have success. And it said to me, after we have success, you're welcome to have your attempt. So I had this face going towards the summit, uh, late or uh, early evening, and now it gets dark on me, and I'm going up this face, and all of a sudden I developed diarrhea.
Uh,
I'm dangling off a rope,
oof.
and it's a very awkward, precarious position. But anyway, I reassemble myself. I'm determined to go on, go a bit higher. It happens again, but I'm still determined to go on, so go a bit higher. Then finally, I start to vomit as well.
Ah,
At that point in time, I stop and sit down on the snow and look around, and all of a sudden, I see where I am on it's a beautiful night. The peaks are totally gorgeous. The stars are out. The moon is out. And what comes out of me is not frustration, but just ecstasy. I start yahooing, right? So here I am on my own, way up there, and I'm yahooing, and it didn't go into disappointment. And so that started me on this whole thing of what happened in that moment that
yeah,
I um, went into ecstasy, not disappointment. And so, or even all the way down the mountain, I was doing the same thing. I was yahooing, and I came back to my tent, and my buddies were saying, "Oh, you must be so disappointed." I'm saying, "No, I'm not." So that got me looking at this whole idea of how perception influences
mm,
our emotions, etc., etc. And I saw, as I did some research, and I see that when we're watching, say, a sporting game, we're going, hooray, woo. We're switching from high emotion to low emotion in the blink of an eye.
yeah,
And so as I start to work with people, I realize now that in certain situations, and I'll give you an example, we can flip from one emotion to another very easily.
yeah,
And so the example I'm going to give you is somebody say driving to work in LA, downtown LA, 5 days a week. One day a week the traffic's bad, they get stuck in traffic and they complain and they get frustrated and blah blah blah, right? They chat to a friend and the friend says, "Well, what are your options? Have you ever thought of learning Spanish or listening to music?" And the person goes, "Oh, I could." Now, what the unconscious pattern which was going to act out for the next 20 years was then to be frustrated in traffic. And typically the person says, "Well, I'm frustrated every time I get into it." They come up with these bold negative statements, right? "I'm frustrated every time I get stuck into traffic." Now, just is with one shift by looking at it from different lens, shift in, perspective. Now, no, I learn Spanish when I'm stuck in traffic and I have a good time.
mm,
So, so sometimes if we look at the unconscious pattern of frustration or whatever the emotion is and
yeah,
go, "Oh, what are my alternatives?" In the
Yeah.
blink of an eye, we can flip it over. Other
Right.
times we might go, oh, I'm I'm always angry when this happens, and um, so I'm going to start working on it. It may not work. It may take, like 6 months, but by saying, okay, my pattern is not locked in place. I can let me change perspective, let me use tools, let me bring in help, let me bring in support. I can absolutely shift this pattern. I have it within me, the ability to shift this pattern. All I need is the willingness and the resources, right?
Yes. You're so right about that. A lot of times people don't realize that they have the ability to create change in whatever the circumstances where they're feeling stuck and unhappy. And so just to even realize that, oh, I can create change, that can be so empowering and so freeing.
Hmm. Yes, yeah. And
Yeah.
ideally, that's what friends are for, right? Is to help us with that recognition. And just as you mentioned about, your Muslim culture, within the Muslim culture, everybody now, it sounds like just about everybody goes through this period of fasting actually a beautiful state, right? So you all support each other and you create accountability, you help, you have these various tools that create and the ability for millions of people to handle something very difficult with ease.
Yes, the community aspect is so important. I've noticed, even from when I was young, that it's much harder to fast on your own. Like,
Mhm.
there are some Muslims who will fast throughout the year, and by and large, they end up doing it on their own because there's very few people. Because it's not required.
Mhm.
Like if you're practicing Muslim, the only time you're required to fast, that is if you're physically okay to do it, is during the month of Ramadan.
Mhm.
So any other time of the year, anyone who does it, they're choosing to do it like totally of their own. I mean, it's basically it's an optional thing that they're choosing to do. And so a lot of times they also end up doing it on their own. And there were some times when I thought to give it a try, to do the optional fasting, and I just found that it was a lot more challenging. Not that
Mhm.
it can't be done, and certainly you can get used to doing it, and then everything's fine. But it's definitely a number of levels more challenging to do it on your own than when you are doing it in community because of exactly the kinds of reasons that you said. You have that greater sense of accountability and support, and the discipline around it comes so much easier because it's like something everyone around you is doing.
Mhm. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I see this applying totally to mental health too, in that,
Yeah.
you know, we we have friends, we have relationships that I see that, the whole idea of us, even let's take back to that angry person again. The more they're in communication with what triggers their anger, how they're noticing it changing, ideally with a partner or even a couple of people, then on almost like a daily basis. Oh, today I noticed I was really bad today, and but we can almost laugh at it. My anger was just so bad today. Then tomorrow it's like, oh, I was even use a numerical scale. I was um, this came up but I responded in a 3. I shrugged it off in 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And the more we speak about that, the more we see that we are malleable, that our personalities are malleable, that we can change. We're not fixed in this is how I am. Um,
Yes. Yes. And talking about it also helps in terms of like I mean, depending on what it is that you're dealing with, but like for me, I had a huge anger issue. because of being traumatized.
Hmm.
But I went through this whole phase where I was very, very angry. And I actually, on the one hand, was angry, but on the other hand, I also felt a strong sense of shame around having that anger because, I like I'm supposed to be a Muslim, a peaceful
Hmm.
person,
Hmm.
practicing peace, living peace,
Hmm.
and here I am, full of anger. And so I felt a certain level of shame about it and like, oh, I'm just no good. I can't even, be a good Muslim. And it would, it's just, the shame did not help at
Hmm.
all. It just makes
Yes.
everything worse. But once I was able to start talking about it in terms of, okay, I'm working through this, I'm going to try and improve this about myself, and then actually talking about it with
Mm.
someone, for the most part, it was my sister. It actually really helped. And like because also the other thing my sister did was that she would celebrate the progress that I made when I was
Right.
able
Yes.
to report
Perfect.
to
Yeah.
her that,
Yeah.
hey,
Hmm.
I didn't get triggered this time, or I got less triggered, and I was able to recover from feeling
Hmm.
that anger a lot sooner. And I actually kept track of, had started keeping track of like how long it took me to normalize. And when I first started, it used to be like weeks. Like
Hmm.
a single incident could push me into like a really angry state. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. And for weeks I couldn't normalize that. Not to say that I was constantly in
Hmm. Yes.
an
Yes. It
extremely
was
high
running in the
state, but
background, right?
but it was like this thing that kept running in the back of my mind sometimes for weeks. And so then when that period got down to days, I was like, okay, hey, this time I got over it in 4 days, and then 2 days, and then one day, and then oh, I got over it in an hour.
Hmm.
But to get that celebration moment with my sister was like part of like what made it really fun also,
Hmm.
because then it
Great.
felt more like almost like a game of like, okay, a game of self-improvement that I'm playing.
Yeah, I think that's totally great. That's often how I work with people is using a scale. And like, some of the realizations about using a scale is that one person recently came to me and said, my life has been suffering for 20 years because of X, Y, Z. So I was asking, well, you know, how on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you in this moment? And the person said, well, I'm a 7. So I said, so between now and the next time we chat, just check in with yourself a few times because, you say, you've been at a 2 for the last 15 years. Let's just see how that number shows up in real life. Next time we chatted, she said, well, I was volunteering with a group and I was at a 10 and I went out for supper with a friend. I was at 10. And so the stories we tell ourselves
Yeah,
create our reality, right? So this person has been saying, I've been a 2, for years, but
yeah,
then when in the moment, they would check in, the score was different. Then the
yeah.
next question was, well, in that moment, what would it take to move from a 7 to an 8 or 9?
Mm.
And because I've asked this question lots of times,
Yeah,
people will quite often the response is, oh, actually, you know what? I can do that right now.
yeah,
All I need to do is take a breath, relax my shoulders, and I'm a
yeah,
9.
right. Yes, I actually really love measuring like my mental emotional states, like different emotions and so forth. It's so helpful. I don't know who, I think it's actually it's not that someone said it, it's actually a principle in physics
Hmm.
that measurement changes behavior.
Oh, yes.
you know um and
Yeah.
it's just that. they're taught generally when you learn this about this idea in the context of a physics class, then you are applying
Hmm.
it and understanding it in the context of how our physical
Hmm.
universe works. But it's actually also true at a mental, emotional, psychological level, is
Hmm.
that observation changes behavior.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's so, and so then it becomes like, okay, what are some better ways of engaging in observation that better in terms of helping
Yes.
create change in the way that I
Yes.
want,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you are able to sort of have a way to measure your
Yeah.
states and how you are doing, it can help you, like for me, to know that, oh, it used to sometimes take weeks for me to
Hmm.
get
That's right.
over
Yes.
that
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
angry incident in my head, and now I can
Hmm.
do it in an hour or some,
Hmm.
or whatever. That just helps, like really with both realizing the immense progress I've made, but also a sense of, okay, I can go further and get even better. And it's just also, I think, more fun.
Hmm. Yes. No, I agree totally. After doing all these expeditions and starting, um, I then went off to India and actually became a Hindu monk for 10 years
Oh, wow.
and did meditations and all sorts of wild things there. And I saw that, you know, we are the creators of our lives and we can manipulate the fabric of our lives and we can all these these various aspects of ourselves we can play with, we can, and you know and gamifying it, as you spoke about, is super important, making it a game so that we are, because you know, yeah, we can, with the we're both the creators, but also we're the observers of our humanity. And when we observe our humanity with compassion, then we're kinder with ourselves and with others.
Yeah. You know what? The question that's popping to my mind now is, what do you think is the purpose of life?
Oh, I mean, for me, it's to um, experience joy, radiate joy and bliss.
Mm.
Really, I think that's, and so because having done all these extreme expeditions, I have a whole pile of accolades. I've done all these sort of things and worked with billionaires, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. And I've been involved in environmental projects, which, as you spoke about, there's a lot of anger and things like this. And and so, are they changing the world? Or so my conclusion from my life experience is that we change the world from our internal space, because we change our internal space, that changes our outer space, which then changes the world, right?
Yeah.
So by having a clear and beautiful internal space, then we tend to do things in the outer world that are kind and compassionate,
Yeah.
which then influences the world.
Yeah. I loved your answer about purpose of life, because like for me, I've also spent a lot of my life just questioning what even is the point of life, of living.
Hmm.
Because especially like when I was in my traumatized and
Hmm.
depressed state, I couldn't see a point to life. Like I didn't see anything that that we do that, like if you didn't do, I mean, other than the fact that, like, if you value life, then you have
Hmm.
to eat, you need to, maybe sleep and protect yourself from physical danger. So there are some things you have to do if you value life.
Hmm.
But I was like, why? why even value life? And why do
Hmm.
anything at all? Like, and so even if I value my life, it's like, why do I value my life? What's the point of living? So,
Hmm.
there are all these things that people do and they get busy with and not just busy with, but we get so invested
Hmm.
and I mean, just so caught up and, like in whatever our life is that we are living. And even though we may be miserable living that life, it's making us seriously unhappy. Um, but we continue to live it, we continue to live it. And I'm like, why? Why? Even why? It was like,
That's yeah, I
yeah,
totally get it. And I um and think I'll boil it down. I'll give you this is my version of the story, okay? So what the mind can produce a lot of negativity, right? And psychologists say that 80% of our thoughts are negative, 20% are positive, right? So when we tip over to the 85%, then all of a sudden life literally becomes bleak, right? Looking through the lens at 85% and you move to 90%, it becomes even bleaker, right? But meanwhile, what we're doing is somehow or other we're charging the wrong thoughts, right? We're feeding the wrong thoughts. And I know it's super difficult to get out of because it seems like just, there's no way out of the loop, right? And so, but as we do start to come out of the loop, then as again, from my time in India, I saw that as we reduce the negative thoughts, then the visibility of the more creative and positive thoughts gets higher. So now we're seeing life. It's like the mud is clearing off the lens over our eyes, and now the light is coming brighter and brighter till eventually, it's hey, life is beautiful, and I can be, you know, looking at a garbage can and full of garbage and go, oh, life is beautiful. Isn't this beautiful? My thoughts don't go to the smell, whatever. You know what I mean? So it's there's a there's lenses we can look through, and on the ultimate level, they're our choice, but on the other level, they're our programming and they're our life circumstance, right? And so we have to be super kind with ourselves about our life circumstance and understand our perception. This our perception is not necessarily the be all and end all. It's
yeah,
our perception in this moment.
yeah. No, so the reason I was also asking this question about the purpose of life is because you have set really like goals to achieve things and do things in your life that, like to other people seem very extreme, and you have helped so many other people um, live um, out these amazing, almost like impossible seeming life goals for many people. So first of all, people have like come to the point where they're like, okay, I have this idea that I'll do it, and then they commit to it, and then they actually do it. And so, like, I just keep coming back to, like, for me, the question of like, well, what's like, especially if you're going to go all the way and actually commit to it and actually do it, like it's like, what is the fuel that sustains you through it? Because if you don't have a clear purpose for why you're doing that, I mean, I can imagine that, you would just fizzle out and be like,
Hmm.
I give
Yeah.
up, turn
Yes, that's
back,
right. Yes,
you
yes,
know?
yeah.
And so like I really appreciate your insight into like what can fuel us to
Hmm.
to stay committed to striving for these goals even when they seem really big or extreme or impossible to other people and maybe even to ourselves, to a part of ourselves, but we still want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and I do see that of the aspect of vision, so sometimes. sometimes we get an intuitive hit. This is super important for me, right?
Mm,
And the mind tends to discount those, but often, from my perspective, those are calls from our being, right? It's a call from our being to do this thing. So even if it's illogical, irrational, and supposedly wasteful, just our being, just follow and things will unfold. So
yeah,
often I see that. So there's a line between intuition and vision that is important to connect with and to follow. And I was doing some research on this recently, and apparently, you know, the average, person says they follow intuition something like 60% of the time. You
mm,
ask successful CEOs, and they're saying, I follow my intuition 85% of the time,
mm,
right? So following intuition leads to business success, right?
mm.
Or success in life, if you take that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
that metric. And
Huh.
um, so I do see it that even when we're struggling to keep on asking, well, what truly motivates me,
Yeah,
and and then um, and then a guide can be the heart too, and
yeah,
so it can be, you know, in some cases it's, well, my heart is painful, so let me heal the pain in my heart. That in and of itself is a beautiful thing right there.
yeah,
That's, that can be the beginning of a massive transformation, just that one piece, right? Of
yeah,
just, my heart feels sore, I want to heal it. What, show me, and then from my perspective, events transpire to bring, to bring the solutions. The
mm,
friend appears, the circumstance, all things appear.
yeah. Oh gosh, Martin, I'm having so much fun talking to you, and I have like about 10 more questions at least that I want to
Oh,
ask you, and we are running out of time. Gosh, do you have any last thoughts for right now?
yeah, sure. So my last thoughts would be, um, check your perceptions, and can you, especially if the perceptions are to do around anger or frustration or upset, and just ask, is there another way I can perceive this that's more helpful to me? And what are my options? And even let me check with other people. What's my possibility in this moment?
Yes,
Yes,
that is a wonderful thought for us to wrap up on. My last reminder to you is to please make sure you check the show notes because we will be dropping Martin's links in there, and that way you can connect with him and continue to learn with him. And yeah, until we meet again, I just wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.
great. Thanks so much.